Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was clearly audible. Shall we start, sir?
Yeah, sure. We can start.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah, Vidya, you can start, ma'am.
Okay, sure. So
Yeah,
let me
Vidya.
share my. Yeah, I will share my screen and we can start.
Yes, sir.
You can start. You can start, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Good evening to everyone present here today. On behalf of the Kare ACM student chapter of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Kalasalingam Academy of Research and Education, I extend a warm welcome to all of you for today's webinar on blockchain for accelerated processing of supply chain. We are privileged to have with us a distinguished industry expert, Mr. Krishnasuri Narayanam, Manager and Senior Research Engineer at IBM Research India, Bangalore, and ACM eminent speaker to enlighten us on this transformative technology. Before we begin, I would like to invite Sethu Sairam to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Vijaya. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of organizing team, I am thrilled to welcome you all to this insightful session. Blockchain for supply and processing. We are honored to have with us Mr. Krishnasuri Narayanam, manager and senior research engineer at IBM, and he is also an ASEAN eminent speaker. As blockchain continues to reshape industries globally, today's session will provide invaluable insights how to groundbreaking technology is revolutionizing supply chain management. Mr. Narayanam's expertise in this field is exceptional, and we are fortunate to have him to share his knowledge today. Whether you are new to blockchain or experienced professional, his ideas will very helpful for you to in your future. Thank you for all joining. We are looking forward for a fruitful session. Now, without any further ado, let's welcome Mr. Krishnasuri Narayanam to lead us today for an exciting session.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Uh, and just before I start, can you please confirm me if you can see my screen? Hello?
Sir,
No,
not
sir,
yet,
we
sir.
can't
Please
see.
share your screen out, sir.
Sorry, can you see my screen?
No, sir, no,
No,
no.
sir.
Please share
Screen
your
not
screen out,
visible,
sir.
sir.
Okay, so there is some challenge then. Let me figure out what to do. Can you see now? Can you tell me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, now we can see. Very good. And there is a slight transition. You can also see this content, right? Agenda.
Yeah, sir.
Okay, very good. And there is another slide here I'm presenting. Can you see accelerated carrier invoice factoring? Um,
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So the application is there. So thanks a lot for the invitation. And I would like to, before start, thank you for this opportunity to your university and also ACM India and IBM Research. Um, there are actually two topics that I'm planning to cover in today's session. They both talk different aspects of supply chain management acceleration using blockchain. So this is in particular supply chain related to global trade. So that is one domain of supply chain, and I will explain you what global trade is and in particular the scope of this problem and the solution that we are talking about, right? So they probably I will give a brief introduction before jumping into the particular problem scope. So let me start with global trade. What is global trade? Global trade is trading goods um, between buyers and sellers. So the buyers are also called as shippers, and the sellers are also called suppliers, right? So when supplier is providing a goods and when shipper is buying it, that is one trade transaction. One a simple, very familiar trade transaction that you all daily experience in day-to-day life is an e-commerce portal like Flipkart or Amazon. Um, you actually buy things, right, and they get delivered to your doorstep. So that is also a simple uh, uh, supply chain transaction, I would say. A simple minimal form of supply chain transaction. But in a global trade transaction, things will be little bit more complicated. In the example that I have just explained, you buy a product on a e-commerce portal, and the portal um owner, whoever is running the portal, they will take the responsibility of delivering the goods. It also means that acquiring the goods from a particular vendor and also shipping the goods to your doorstep. In case of a global trade, uh, the main difference is that the buyer and the seller, they are located in two different countries. In the simple example that I mentioned, probably the transaction is happening, goods you are buying within the same country, right? The vendor who is the provider of the goods and the buyer, that's you, are in the same country in India. On the other hand, in a global trade, the supplier and the buyer or the shipper are located in two different countries. When they are located in two different countries, the shipment of the goods needs to happen via multiple legs of journey in terms of land carrier, with the help of land carrier at the origin country and land carrier at the destination country and a ocean carrier. So for example, this is the supplier who is located somewhere in US. Then first that goods needs to be carried by the land carrier um, to a port terminal, international port terminal. From that port terminal to, let's say, it needs to come to Chennai in India via ocean carrier, and then from Chennai, which is a port terminal, to the particular city where you are located, a land carrier will be responsible to transport that particular container, which is containing the your ordered goods, right? So this is the journey of a typical container containing the goods between a supplier and shipper um, in a global trade setting. And in this case, the shipper needs to pay for both two parties. Actually, here, if you can see, the shipper is simply getting the goods, and the shipper needs to pay the bills for both the supplier and the carrier. Why? For the supplier, the shipper needs to pay because the supplier is supplying the particular goods, right? And why the shipper needs to pay to the carrier? Because carrier is providing the goods transportation, right? So there are two services: providing the goods itself and providing this goods transportation. So these two services are provided by two parties. They are the suppliers and the carriers, and to both these parties the shippers will pay. So this is a simple definition of a global trade transaction. So shippers buying goods from suppliers, carriers providing goods transportation, and shippers and suppliers located in different countries. So just wanted to stop here. If you have any queries on this slide, because understanding what is the global trade problem is very important to further understanding the remaining details. Do you have any queries at this point in time?
It's clear, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, very good. Now, let me proceed. So, in this entire goods trade transaction, there are certain processes involved. So, the first one is the shipper raises a PO, purchase order, seeking what are the items and what is the quantity of each item the shipper is requesting, right? So that information is captured in a. So all these transactions actually they uh, they are maintained by use of certain documents which are called EDI documents, electronic data interchange documents. And there are multiple different types of such EDI documents like purchase order, dispatch advice, commercial invoice, um, receive advice, claim advice, and payment advice. These are the different types of electronic data interchange documents involved in a typical goods trade transaction, and each have its own role to play. For example, entire global trade transaction is initiated by creating a document called purchase order. This is the first step in the entire process. This will contain information like what are the different types of items requested and what is the quantity of each item requested. So upon raising this PO, a supplier will receive that PO from the shipper and pack the goods in a container and initiates a freight transport. That means the goods will be packed into a container and the container will be handed over to a land carrier. just now we have seen, right, in the leg of journey, that is the first leg of journey. So that is when the transportation of the goods, or also known as freight transport, starts. At that moment, the supplier also releases another document called dispatch advice. That means what are all the different goods dispatched by the supplier. Why we need a different DA dispatch advice document? Because the supplier, as a buyer, may have asked a certain quantity, and the shipper might have asked a certain quantity in PO, but the as a supplier, you may not have all the items available, right? So you may be supplying only subset of those items. So the dispatch advice captures accurately how many number of items and what are the different types of items that are shipped, right? So this is the purpose of the dispatch advice. So this document is generated after receiving PO and just before the freight transport begins. Okay, so at that point, invoice is also generated from the supplier side, because the supplier knows that what are the different types of goods and how many quantities they have supplied. They can actually generate an invoice which captures how much is the amount that the shipper needs to pay to the supplier. Okay, so that is the time when an invoice is generated. So this is an event generation of DA dispatch advice, which is triggering the invoice generation process, and this is in particular called supplier invoice. What is the other invoice involved here? Carrier invoice. That means for because the freight transport is carried out by a particular carrier, um, a invoice needs to be generated by that carrier, indicating how much the shipper needs to pay to that carrier. So that invoice also will be generated at the end of the goods transportation. So if there are multiple legs of journey, for example, origin side land carrier, ocean carrier, and destination side land carrier. In this case, in the previous example, there will be three carrier invoices. One carrier invoice for the land carrier, origin side land carrier, one carrier invoice for ocean carrier, and another carrier invoice for destination side land carrier. So corresponding to each carrier involved, one invoice will be raised, which contains the details about how much the shipper needs to pay to that carrier. And one invoice is generated by the supplier, which contains the details about how much is the amount to be paid by the shipper to the supplier. So this is how the different invoices are generated and at different points in time, right? Now, once the goods is received by the shipper, so that is the shipper is at the destination country. Typically, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks of time for the container to be shipped from the origin country to the destination country. Around 15 to 20 days it will take, because it needs to be transported from between two different countries, right? So it takes that much time. Once the carrier is the container is received by the shipper, there is a team called goods receiving team of the shipper. That team actually validates whether the goods are received in proper acceptable condition or not. So for example, even though the supplier has shipped 10 items of a particular goods, one or two may be damaged during the course of goods transportation. Like the damages could be because of physical damage that is happening at the time of transportation, or sometimes because of the goods delivery delays, the some sensitive food kind of items may get damaged because of the delay in the delivery and so on, right? So some damages may be there. So the damaged items, obviously the shipper won't accept, right? So they will produce a document called receive advice upon receiving the goods and uh, validating the quality of the goods, and whichever is the goods that is in acceptable condition, corresponding to that a receive advice is generated. So if you compare the dispatch advice and receive advice will always contain either equivalent to or subset of the items of dispatch advice, right? So if dispatch says that 10 items are shipped, receive may contain maximum 10 accepted, or only 8 are accepted or 9 are accepted, assuming 1 or 2 are damaged. So this is the RA receive advice that is produced by the goods receiving team at the shipper side, that is at the destination country. So why this is generated? Because of by using this receive advice, claims will be processed. What claim means? There is an invoice generated by the supplier and the carrier, right? Now assume that there are two damaged items. The shipper obviously don't want to pay for those damaged items. Now this needs to be bared by either the supplier or the shipper or the carrier, one of them. Whoever is responsible for the damage, they need to bear the cost for the damaged item. So that amount needs to be subtracted from the original invoice. For example, if I need to pay $1,000 per item, and there are 10 items I have ordered as a shipper, so 1,000 into 10, $10,000 I have to pay. But if I assume that one item is damaged, then as a shipper I am entitled to pay only for 9 items, that is $9,000. So $1,000, who will need to pay? Either that is the part of the claim generation, that either that will be paid by the carrier or the supplier, because whoever is responsible for the damage, right? If the goods is not packed properly, upon investigation it will be found. If the goods is not packed properly, then it is obviously issue from the supplier side, and hence supplier will bear that damage cost. If the carrier, on the other hand, goods is properly shipped, but the carrier didn't handle the transportation properly, then they will be responsible for that. So that whatever is the claim amount out of $10,000, I need to claim $1,000. I can only pay $9,000 now, because only 9 items are accepted out of this shipment order, right? So that is the $1,000 is part of the claim generation. So this will be generated by referring to the receive advice. Once claim advice is generated, then payment will be adjusted. So that means from the invoice amount, we will subtract the claim amount, and final payment amount to each party involved will be generated. Once we have the payment adjustment done and the payment advice that is capturing the final amount to be paid by the shipper to either to the carrier or to the supplier is computed, that payment advice will be processed by the payment processing team of the shipper. Okay, so the payment processing team typically follows a particular protocol, payment settlement process, and settle the accounts of the supplier and carriers with the appropriate amounts. So this is the full end-to-end process involved in a global trade transaction. Now, I have explained the importance of different documents involved here and different processes. Now, if you see these two processes together, that is generation of claims and adjustment of the invoice to produce payment advice, PA document, is together called invoice processing. So this is one lengthy process typically faced by any supply chain transaction. And there is a payment processing, another process. So if time permits, I will provide details about how this invoice processing can be accelerated, and similarly how payment processing can be accelerated. There is a different talk that I have. I will try to cover, but we will start with invoice processing and see where we stand with respect to time. Before I move on, are you clear with respect to the different processes and documents involved and their importance? Okay, so I assume that you don't have any queries. If you have any queries, please feel free to interrupt me and ask your questions. So in the entire process here, we have input to EDI documents like PO, DA, CI, that is the commercial invoice or the invoice from the supplier, and RA, receive advice. Outputs are CA and PA. CA is the claim advice and PA is the payment advice. So just to iterate once again, purchase order is raised by the shipper before goods dispatch. Dispatch advice raised by the supplier after goods dispatch but before goods delivery. Commercial invoice raised by again supplier after goods dispatch but before the goods delivery. And receive advice raised by the shipper after goods delivery. So this is very important when each of these documents is available to the all the parties involved, because we are proposing an optimization based on this timing only. When at what point in time each different document is available, we actually propose scope for optimization. Okay, so let me move on. Glimpse of blockchain-based solutions for global trade. As we have seen, there are different processes in the entire global trade transaction: freight transportation, invoice generation, invoice processing, and payment processing. So they happen in sequence, right? First, freight transportation happens, then invoice generation happens, then invoice processing will happen. Finally, payment processing or payment settlement will happen. And there are solutions actually which are also blockchain based to address the different challenges in each of these processes. For example, during freight transportation, one of the challenges is providing end-to-end visibility with the goods handoff between trade participants, which is happening multiple times. For example, if you go back to in this case scenario, how many times the goods is handed off between different parties? First, the supplier will be packing the goods in a container and hand it over to land carrier. So there is one handoff. Then the land carrier will be responsible for the container and will hand it over to the ocean carrier. Later, ocean carrier will hand off the container to the destination side land carrier. And finally, this is handed over to shipper. So there are multiple handoffs happening during a course of one single trade transaction. Now, let's say if the container is missing at some location, as I said, this entire process takes about 15 to 20 days time, and somewhere actually the container is missing and it's not received by the shipper. Now, how do you trace back where exactly the container is missing? So everybody will say that no, we have done our handoff to the subsequent party in the downstream party, but we are not responsible, right? So nobody wants to take that issue. Everybody would say that we are done with the handoff to the subsequent party, but somewhere it is missing. So how do you know it? So tracking that is a big challenge faced by the participants, and platforms like supply trade platforms. Actually, there are a few examples. They provide this end-to-end visibility so that whenever a goods is handed over from one party to the other party, a corresponding document, electronic document, will be generated and accepted by both these parties. And hence, at any point in time, by looking at this chain of handoffs, one can easily identify who is the owner of the container at any given point in time. So that it is very easy to navigate back and see where the container is missing. So such are the problems addressed by the freight transport platforms. And there are invoice generation platforms. They in particular handle disputes because when invoice is generated, invoice is nothing but a combination of charges. You include the different types of charges and sum up all those charges, that becomes your total invoice bill. Now, what charges to include in a given invoice? That depends on the terms and conditions between the supplier and uh, the shipper, and what terms to adhere to while generating a particular invoice. That is prone to disputes because the invoice generation party, for example, the supplier may refer to a different cost structure and add unnecessary charges into the invoice, and which shipper disputes saying that this is added unnecessarily, because all the charges included in the invoice the shipper needs to pay, right? So shipper don't want to accept those charges which are added not in accordance with their the agreement with the suppliers. So such platforms actually what they do is they maintain the history of all the contractual agreements, and whenever invoice is generated over a smart contract on blockchain, they refer to the appropriate the contractual agreement which is active during that time, because each contractual agreement has a lifetime, which also means that the starting time and ending time for its acceptability, right? So whether whichever is the contractual agreement that is alive during that time, by referring to that, the smart contract will compute the charges, and hence it leads to less number of disputes in terms of including irrelevant charges, right? So this kind of solutions actually, again blockchain based, they try to avoid the disputes. A third category of solutions is invoice processing platforms, the like the one that we are going to talk in this session. So these claim processing platforms, typically they compute the claims and also adjust the claims from the invoices to arrive at the payment advices. But typically what they do, they collect all the required input documents that I have shown earlier. These are the documents, and use them in the process of computation in one go. So I will let you know what exactly is the proposed optimization here. And last, the payment processing. This is the last step. Here, typically, to different suppliers and carrier accounts, the shipper does the payment, and the payment settlement is all tracked on financial networks. Actually, those are the blockchain platforms again, involving financial transactions, and they track. So now let's focus more on the invoice processing platforms, right? So how to achieve accelerated invoice processing? So we can break down the claim generation into claims under different categories. As I said, in the invoice processing, there are two steps. One is claim generation. Second thing is payment adjustment. Now, the claim generation, there are different types of claims, and typically what happens is, the all the claims are generated at once at the end of the goods transportation. So what this paper is trying to propose is, you don't need to actually wait for the generation of different types of claims for the completion of the goods transportation. Instead, certain claims you can generate them even before the completion of goods transportation. So that also means that you don't need to wait that 15 to 20 days time before you generate the claims. You can certain portions of the claims you can generate much before, and hence they can be settled much earlier. So that's how, what happens if we generate those claims much before. If there are any disputes on those claims, those disputes can also be carried out before the goods transportation completes, and hence we will save a lot of time uh, as part of the end-to-end global trade transaction. So the idea is we can break down the claim generation into claims under different categories, where claims under certain categories can be generated and issued before goods delivery to the shipper. So this is the crux of the entire optimization here. So the advantages with this approach are twofold. One is dispute process can take place before the goods delivery to the shipper, hence accelerated invoice processing. So earlier what used to happen, after completion of goods delivery, then the claims are generated, then dispute handling needs to happen. Typically dispute handling will again take up to a week to 2 weeks time. So all this adds up to the length of the goods global trade transaction completion. So the more days it takes for the dispute resolution, or the more days it takes for the generation of claims itself, the lengthier is the global trade transaction. So what we are trying to do is we can generate these claims before goods delivery and issue to all the parties who are involved. They verify whether the claims are generated properly or not. If there are any disputes, they can carry out the dispute handling before the goods completion, delivery completion. So dispute reconciliation becomes easier since disputes are handled at granularity of claims under different category. Another advantage with this approach is earlier the claims are generated, different claims are generated all in one go in one single document. So reconciliation, which also means that um, resolving any disputes, right? Which particular baseline documents to refer to in the process of dispute resolution and so on is much more complex. Now it is very easy because you split the claims under different categories, and with each category you can easily narrow down to what are the ground truth documents and why the claim is produced as described in that claim advice document. So it becomes very easy to reconcile also. So these are the two advantages with this accelerated approach. So the main differences of this approach with the state-of-the-art approach are: the state-of-the-art approach begin processing claims after goods delivery, whereas the proposed approach begins the claims before completion of goods delivery. So this is the main difference between. So one that traditionally is done after the goods delivery. The second one, the proposed approach happens before the goods delivery happens, completes. So that is the main difference. Okay. So there is some background noise. Can you please go on mute? Okay, so let's look into what are the different claim categories, right? There are basically four different types of claim categories. One is short delivery, second thing is price discrepancy, third one is goods not delivered, fourth is transport damage. I have already given an example of what is transport damage means, right? When dispatch advice says 10 items are supplied by the supplier, whereas the receiving team at the shipper side, they can only accept, let's say, 9 items. So there is one damaged item, which is tagged as transportation damage. Now, that is one claim category. So any item that is damaged because of transportation issues, you don't want to pay for that, and hence that amount needs to be claimed. So this is one claim category. The rest of the three categories are short delivery. So that means we asked for 10 items, but as a shipper, I asked for 10 items, but the supplier supplied only 8 items. 2 items are not even packed. They are not reflecting even in the dispatch advice. But the invoice is billed for those short delivered items also, right? So, and that extra amount we, as a shipper, we don't want to pay. So that is called short delivery. There is some background noise.
Sir, 1 minute, sir. Excuse me, who is unmute? Say to remove it, otherwise. Jnani Reddy, Jnani Reddy. Say to you can remove. Admin you can remove. No, you can remove. Say to Reddy. Sedu,
Jnani Reddy, mute your mic.
Jnani Reddy. Sedu, Sedu, are you there? Sedu.
Sir, wait, sir. I will call to him, sir. Wait, sir.
Yes, sir. Ask him to remove. Otherwise,
Yes, sir. He is removed, sir.
remove. Okay, okay. Sir, sorry for the inconvenience, sir. Please, you can proceed, please.
Sure, sure. No problem.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
this is the short delivery. So that means the dispatch advice itself saying that only 8 items are delivered, but the invoice is billed for those undelivered items also. So that is short delivery. And price discrepancy is as part of the PO purchase order, we requested items to be supplied at a particular price. if the supplier is agreeing with that price, they can supply it. But it should not be the case that the supplier is supplying at a higher price. At a higher price, the shipper won't be accepting, right? So this is called price discrepancy. And the next one is goods not delivered. So that means difference in the goods quantity between received and invoiced. Okay, so this is a short deliveries difference in the goods quantity between ordered and invoiced. So goods not delivered invoice is containing amount for undelivered or not shipped items, whereas short delivery is or excess delivery is as a in the PO we asked for more items, but the dispatch advice is containing less items. So these three different categories. The scenario is that we can claim these different categories before the goods transportation completes. Okay, so that is the main difference between these four types of categories. Transportation damage you will only realize at the completion of goods transportation, whereas the short delivery, price discrepancy, and goods not delivered, you can identify even before goods transportation completes, because they use these documents POCI and DA, and these documents, if you refer to the earlier table, the PODA and CI, these three documents which are used for the computation of first three types of claims, they are all available before the goods delivery completion, and only the receive advice is available after the goods delivery completion. And hence, the crux is that these three types of claims, you compute them before goods delivery completion, and this one you can wait for the goods delivery to complete and then complete. So what we do is we break down the entire goods delivery, the claim generation into two passes. In the first pass, using these three types of documents, POCA and DI, you compute these three categories of claims. And because these three categories of claims are already computed, if there are any disputes with them, disputes can also be handled before the goods delivery completion. And once the goods delivery completes, and once the RA receive advice is produced, then you include the transportation damage claim. So this is a process after the goods delivery completion. So that's how we split the computation. And there is a mathematical proof. In the interest of time, I don't want to go. What we prove is that in this paper, that the total the amount to be paid, which is this quantity, that is um, that is entitled amount, right? Whatever the shipper is receiving, the shipper is entitled to pay. So that amount, either the actual claim amount is the difference between what the supplier is asking the shipper to pay minus what the shipper is entitled to pay. So this amount is the claim amount, and this claim amount you compute in either in one go or in four, by splitting into four different claims, as we have just seen. Um, they both are shown to be equal mathematically. So that proves the fact that you can actually don't need to um, process these claims in one go. Instead, in two passes, you can complete the processing of these claims. One set of claims before the goods delivery completion, and another set of claims after the goods delivery completion. So that is in the particular optimization that we introduced in terms of the invoice processing acceleration. Let me quickly take you through the optimization that we done in terms of the payment processing optimization. In the payment processing optimization, actually, the payment processing uh, before you reach to the payment processing stage, the payment advice is already finalized, and which contains the details about how much is the amount that shipper needs to pay to the carrier or the supplier. So traditionally, the payment settlement happens in the following manner. Okay, so let me take you to one chart here. Okay, so typically, once the payment advice is generated, the shipper will pay either to the carrier or to the supplier against the corresponding invoice within 60 days post the goods delivery, or within 60 days post the generation of that invoice. So this is the typical um, way of payment settlement. Now, what is the downside with this? Let's say the carrier needs to receive some amount from the shipper. They have to wait for 60 days. So that is a huge delay from the carrier point of view. So can we actually in any way accelerate this process? So there is a method called invoice factoring. So this is the typical way of invoice settlement. Once the invoices are generated, it takes 60 days for the settlement of those invoices by the shipper. Now, there is a concept called invoice factoring, using which this 60 days can be brought down. What that invoice factoring tells is the following. What it tells is typically you don't need to wait. The shipper don't need to pay the amount before. Instead, a bank will pay on behalf of the shipper to the carrier or supplier, and uh, because the carrier or the supplier is receiving the amount early, they can actually go for some discount. Let's say, as a carrier, I need to receive $1,000 after 60 days. Assume that if I'm given a choice that I don't need to wait for 60 days to receive my $1,000, instead, today itself, I can receive with a discount, that is, instead of $1,000, $995, $5 at discount. Can I receive even today? I will be happy, right? Because I'm having access to my money much more earlier, 60 days before the intended waiting time, but at the cost of maybe some 5-10% discount, right? So that is what is the invoice factoring means. The banks come into picture, which are called financial organizations. They come into picture. What they do is they settle the invoice amount with a discount to the carriers today itself, and they receive the actual $1,000 from the shipper on the 60th day only. But with this process, how the banks are getting benefited, because they're generating the interest rate after 60 days, they will receive full amount from the shipper. But today they are releasing only discounted amount, that is $990 only, to the carrier or the supplier. So the remaining $10 will be the profit for the banks. So that is how they accelerate the process. With this approach, how it is benefiting each party, the carriers, they gain quicker access to the money they are owning, they owed. That is, earlier after 60 days they need to get $1,000. Now, 59 days earlier, that is today itself, they can get $990, for example, $10 lesser. So this is a benefit for the carrier, because they are getting 59 days earlier access to the same amount. Shipper, they can get more time to pay the invoice amount to the factoring company. So for the shipper, they will pay full $1,000, and they don't need to be in rush. They can pay at the end of 60 days as per their norms. So there is not much change. For the factoring company, they are earning the invoice discount as the profit. So this is benefiting each and every party. So this is a typical norm of settling the invoice, known as invoice factoring. Now, can we actually further accelerate this process? Is the question that we ask, and the answer for that is yes. It is possible to further accelerate, and accelerated carrier invoicing paper and this particular solution that we proposed here is the solution. I will give you a very brief glimpse of how this is achieved. So how this accelerated payment invoice factoring is done is the following way. Today, what is happening? First, the invoice is generated in full at the end of the goods transportation, and at that time, the invoice factoring is kickstarting. So, what we propose is that you don't need to wait for the goods transportation to complete and the full invoice to generate. Instead, you can generate the invoice in pieces, because the different charges part of the invoice, they don't need to wait for the completion of the goods transportation. Certain charges are called um, the fixed charges, and they are applied unconditionally into the invoice. So as soon as the goods transportation starts, those charges will be part of the invoice. Now what one can do is they can generate the invoice on blockchain with those partial charges and issue to all the parties involved. That is, let it be the shippers, let it be the financial institutions, let it be the carriers, and so on. Whoever is involved in the supply chain transaction, everybody can have access to this partial invoice. And by looking at this partial invoice, one can make the particularly the financial organizations, they can make a call in terms of whether they can issue a subset of that invoice amount to the suppliers or carriers in advance. So that is the crux of this idea. So you don't need to wait for the complete 30 days to complete the goods transportation and wait for the invoice factoring to take on the 31st day. Instead, assuming on 0th day that flight transportation starts, from that day itself, they can actually the invoice can be generated in parts, and uh, the partial invoice that is generated electronically can be settled by the financial organizations from the beginning. So that means that assume that the first part of the invoice is generated on day 4, and a small amount of that invoice amount can be issued by the financial organization, and the corresponding either carrier or supplier can start receiving that amount. So they can get access to a part of the invoice amount much more earlier. Earlier they have to, so initially, traditionally, after the goods delivery completion on 30th day, they have to wait for 60 more days. That is on 90th day, the shipper will pay to the carrier. So this is called open account method. And what invoice factoring method is doing is, they are the factoring org or the financial organization or bank is coming into picture, and they are paying to the carrier on the immediate next day with a discount. So the carriers are getting access to the amount, don't need to wait for 60 more days. Instead, just they complete the freight transportation, and immediately next day they can get access to the amount. But now what we are proposing is, you don't even, as a carrier, you don't even need to wait for the goods delivery completion. Certain amount as a carrier, by being accepting the freight transportation, you are entitled to receive. And why can't you start receiving that as early as possible? That's what is the idea here. So part of the invoice, carrier invoice amount, the carriers can receive much earlier. So assume that the first partial invoice is generated on 4th day. On that day itself, part of that amount can be issued by the factoring company, and carrier can get it. Why? What is the advantage by doing so for the factoring company? They can get a better discount by doing the invoice factoring on 30th day after goods transportation. If they are charging maybe 5% or 8% interest, now by doing uh, carrier invoicing much more advanced before the goods transportation completion, they are at higher risk and they can charge more discount rate, maybe 12% discount. So that is in such a way, in that way, it is benefiting again all the parties involved. The factoring organization is getting earning more money, carrier is getting access to at least part of the invoice amount much ahead, even before completion of goods delivery. And for shipper, there is not much change. They will only settle it on the 90th day to the financial organization, right? So all the parties, either they are impacted or only benefited. So this is the crux of this idea. With that, probably I will stop and open for any questions. Hello.
Yeah, yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine. Yeah, good, sir. You can continue, please.
No, I think we are on top of the hour. I probably want to stop here
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
open it for any questions.
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir. Sir, I'm having one small query.
Sure,
Sir,
sure.
here, how this blockchain technology support sustainability initiatives, sir? Because now everything will be going on in terms of sustainability.
Yeah,
So we still, in terms of academic institutions, still we are lagging in that.
yeah. So
Uh,
sustainability for blockchain, definitely that's um, one challenging area to go
yes, yes.
because right, sustainability, it again won't come for free. It comes with certain compromises at times. For example, maybe uh, at a compromise in terms of the time delays involved, or maybe at the optimization for certain computational commitments involved, right? So in blockchain also, if you want to look at the sustainability aspects, you need to identify what are those the trade-offs, right? So typically, when sustainability you want to introduce, uh, you need to actually make this analysis of what are the different trade-offs possible and take a call on it in terms of let's say I can give you a simple example, right? If my SLA service level agreements say that any um, the API request that I make needs to complete within 30 seconds. Then, as a cloud service provider, I may need to host multiple instances of that application so that even if a lot of requests for that application come in a given chunk, still I will be able to meet the SLA agreement with each of these requests. So that also means that I have to maintain a lot of redundancy in terms of the number of services hosted. On the other hand, if my SLA agreement is a little bit relaxed, instead of 30 seconds, I'm okay even if my API request is satisfied in 60 seconds. So in that case, I don't need to actually maintain so many replicas of my service in the backend, which also means that I use less amount of resources. I don't run instead of 10 service instances. This time I can only run maybe 3 or 4 service instances, which is sufficient to meet this relaxed service level agreement. Right? Hence, what happens? You are saving a lot in terms of the compute requirement, which in turn is saving in terms of the carbon emissions, and hence your platform now is more sustainable. So this comes with a compromise or
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
of with the SLA agreement relaxation. So similarly in blockchain, we need to analyze what are the different trade-offs possible, and accordingly we need to make a call.
Yeah, yeah. Fine, sir. Fine, fine. Great. Sir, then how the conventional method will overcome the traditional method, sir, in terms of blockchain as well as supply chain management? Any specific challenges we are facing or something else?
The conventional and the blockchain-based solutions definitely the conventional approaches. There are a lot of challenges, as I said earlier. For example, the providing transparency in terms of goods handoff in a supply chain transaction, and knowing at a given point in time who is handling the goods is a challenge. With supply chain, with blockchain based powering supply chain blockchain based technology, a lot of transparency is introduced, and hence such transactions, such issues can be eliminated. But the downside of it is that you need to process all the transactions on blockchain now, and it is a overhead in that sense, right? So again, here I would say there is a trade-off. So you need to make a call what portion of the supply chain transaction you want to process on blockchain and which portions you don't want to process on blockchain.
Yes, sir. Great. Fine, sir. Fine. Yeah, Vijaya?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can give, you can continue for vote of thanks. Or can I give the vote of thanks?
Thank you so much, Krishnasuri sir, for that insightful presentation. The concepts of blockchain and its use in supply chain management are indeed. Feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present, not giving it. It's essential to acknowledge those who made this webinar possible. And with that, I would like to invite Dr. P. Nagaraj sir, Associate Professor in CSE and Kare ACM Student Chapter Faculty Sponsor, to deliver the vote of thanks. Please, sir.
Yeah, yes, ma. Thanks, Vijaya. Krishna sir, good evening once again.
Sure, sir. Good evening.
Sir, actually, on behalf of our university, Kalasalingam Academy of Research and Education, and we have Kare ACM Student Chapter. Really, your section is very much interesting, sir. Not even I didn't waste 1 minute time also. I have clearly watched your speech. It's really very nice, as well as very much interesting. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to you.
Thank you.
That means the sir, Mr. Krishnasuri Narayanam, sir, manager and senior research engineer at IBM Research India, Bangalore, as well as he is serving as ACM India eminent speaker, for delivering such an insightful and engaging session on blockchain for accelerated processing of supply chain. So really I'm saying your expert knowledge and valuable insight have truly dependent our understanding of the different transformation and potential of blockchain technology in supply chain management. We, in terms of same Kalasalingam University, we sincerely appreciate the time and effort you invested in sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you once again, sir, for this enriching webinar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Sir, please come to our university one day in physical mode, sir.
Sure.
I will invite you next semester through Parivalagan, sir. Again, I will communicate with you. Next semester, if possible, April or May or February month, please come and visit our university one day in occasion of either ACM eminent speaker program or some jury members of program.
Sure, sir.
Please, sir.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, sir. And I definitely consider and honor your request.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. And special thanks to Parivalagan, sir, and all the ACM core team members for the successful webinar of this. Last but not least, all the participants are engaged in well and good manner, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. For further things, Parivalagan, sir, will communicate with you, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jay. You can host the wind up. Yeah. Thank you, guys. You may leave. Sedu?
Sir.
Yeah, you can wind
Sir,
up.
Sir.
Sedu. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.